Story 1. Trump seems to view geopolitics in three ways. 1. He sees the world in terms of great powers where might makes right. He does not particularly care about the international rules-based order. One might argue that this makes him a realist, but it also means he has more in common with leaders like Putin. Great powers believe they are entitled to their own sphere of influence based on their might, and any encroachment on those spheres by other great powers is viewed as a threat. Hence, Trump sees North America and the surrounding regions as the United States' sphere of influence. Canada and Mexico must be subservient. Chinese influence in Panama must be expelled per the Monroe Doctrine. Greenland is also close enough to be considered American in this worldview, and control over Canada would allow him to dominate the American portion of the Arctic Circle. Trump focuses on resource scarcity rather than shared prosperity. He frequently discusses primary raw resources like oil, gas, and rare earths, such as the mineral deal in Ukraine. He is clearly concerned that China dominates the supply of some of these resources, particularly rare earths, and wants the United States to have full supply chain security. He seems to prioritize this over free trade. The annexation of Canada and Greenland would provide the United States with significant amounts of resources to exploit. Trump views foreign relations as a process of deal-making. Great powers are strong competitors where business deals must be made. Conversely, weaker nations lack leverage and can be ruthlessly exploited. Mexico and Canada rely on U.S. trade and do not have military capabilities that can contest the U.S. Greenland, similarly, cannot be feasibly defended by Europe. Win-win deals should only be made with other great powers because, in Trump's view, one can secure a better outcome if the other party loses. A good deal is one where the U.S. gains the upper hand while the other party is left dissatisfied. This attitude is precisely how he has approached Ukraine and other European nations that he perceives as weak. In summary, he aims to achieve 1. A strong American sphere of influence that incorporates Canada, Mexico, and Greenland, extending across the entire North American continent. These nations should be vassals or face annexation. Resource security by controlling Canada and Greenland, which are rich in minerals and energy resources. They are also crucial for controlling trade routes in the Arctic. Favorable deals for the United States by leveraging military and economic threats. Whether Trump's worldview is correct is a separate question. If he follows through, he may cause significant damage to the U.S. economy and soft power. Story 2. He is what I call a criminal of opportunity. He is turning the world upside down and collecting whatever falls out of the pockets. Story 3. He wants Canada for all its natural resources. It is a resource-rich land, and if he could take it, he could claim it and the revenue that comes from those resources without concern for the Canadian people. Story 4. I believe most of the outrageous things Trump says serve multiple purposes. 1. He may actually want to do it or is at least considering it. By mentioning it now, he can later say, "How can you be surprised when I told you I was going to do it?" 3. He distracts the media, allowing them to focus on things he will likely never attempt. However, they would be negligent not to report on it at all. He enjoys provoking Democrats and takes pleasure in getting them worked up. I genuinely think all 4 of these points are true. Story 5. There is only one thing that all his policies have in common. All of his policies damaged the diplomatic relationships that the United States has with its allies. It is also remarkable that many of his policy choices and actions directly benefit Russia. You do not have to believe the intent to see the effect, and once you add up all the effects, it is not a significant leap to assume that this is the intent. Story 6. Legacy. Ultimately, Trump does not see himself as a politician. He sees himself as a businessman, more specifically as a real estate tycoon. If Trump were able to annex one of these areas, he would be the first president in 38 years to annex a country and make it a United States territory. The last land annexed by the United States was the Northern Mariana Islands in 1986. His business acumen has always been questioned. If he were to negotiate a deal to annex any of these countries or even part of them, his reputation as a real estate tycoon would be unquestionable, as he would be responsible for the biggest growth in United States land area in modern history. Story 7. Abusers typically isolate their victims from their family and friends because lonely people have no resources to escape and are at the abuser's mercy. Vladimir Putin has a large propaganda machine convincing Russian citizens that everyone else hates them and wishes harm upon them. Does this sound familiar? Story 8. He is a Russian asset. His goal is to destabilize the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and destabilize the United States while he and the Republican Party make a profit. They will end up richer and the American people will suffer. By the time this is realized, it will be too late. Story 9. Attention. Donald Trump is an idiot, but more importantly, he is a narcissist. It's hardly a secret. If this comment is deleted, then that is pretty damning. Trump acts outrageously. He is ridiculous, but he is not stupid. He knows how to get attention and hold it. He didn't get as far as he has by accident. So he fights to make an impact. He doesn't care if that impact is good or bad, only if it immortalizes his name. He has done that. His name will be in history books, but for worse. He just doesn't care about that part. So when he threatens neighboring territories, it is just a ploy to make his name bigger. He is not worried about you and me. He is worried about himself. Not from a wealth perspective. He has enough money or can borrow enough. At his level, it is all about legacy. But for a narcissist, size is all that matters. Good, bad, or anything in between does not matter. Story 10. This gives a lot of credit to his actions by suggesting there is a grand plan. There has never been a plan other than to make money in any way possible for himself. Others do not matter. The country does not matter. Story 11. Mostly to distract from the far more serious damage he and his puppet masters, such as Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin, are causing in other areas. Story 12. His driving motivation is narcissism. In business and government, he has a zero-sum perspective. If any of our allies benefit from an arrangement, it must come at our expense. He views even minor victories against our allies as America winning, even if they come with long-term costs. It's dysfunctional. We should never forget that he has no notable business accomplishments. His strategy doesn't work, and it won't succeed at a national level either. Story 13. Mainly a distraction to divert attention from the declining economy, allowing the wealthy to purchase assets at a discounted rate. Story 14. Due to how Reddit works, this may not reach many people. However, the answer to the question is that Musk's grandfather was part of the technocratic movement, which envisioned a utopia, an imaginary political entity that unites Canada, the United States, Mexico, Greenland, all of Central America, and parts of South America into one space. Trump is doing this because Musk advised him to. Story 15. Keep the chaos alive. Undermining our government from within. Damaging relationships with our allies. Threatening to annex 2 countries without hesitation. The goal appears to be creating turbulence and stretching resources for American citizens as thin as possible, crippling any resistance as we teeter on the brink of economic collapse. Story 16. Irreparably damaging the United States economy, national security, and international reputation for the benefit of his top advisor, Putin. Story 17. Presence in the Arctic is essential to secure trade routes and resources in that region. It is significant. It is uncertain whether Mexico is necessary. Story 18. Trump's recent threats to annex Greenland, Canada, Panama, and Mexico may seem like bluster, but they align with key U.S. geopolitical interests and notably, Russia's strategic goals. Greenland, a home to Pituffik Space Base, a critical U.S. military facility protecting NATO from Russian missile threats. Rich in rare earth minerals, which China and Russia are eyeing. Russia has militarized the Arctic by reopening Soviet-era bases. Trump's rhetoric could undermine NATO control. Canada, Arctic and resources, holds massive oil and natural gas reserves and strategic shipping routes as Arctic ice melts. Russia is expanding its Arctic presence militarily. Weakening Canada's sovereignty could strengthen U.S. Arctic claims, but also play into Russia's hands. Panama, canal control and sanctions on Russia. Panama has blocked Russian vessels due to international sanctions. The Panama Canal is a global shipping choke point. Control over it would benefit Russia's trade routes. Trump's fixation on the canal could distract from Russia's economic struggles due to sanctions. Mexico, resources, trade, military. Mexico nationalized its lithium industry, limiting foreign access to a key battery resource. The United States-Mexico-Canada agreement keeps Mexico's economy closely tied to the U.S. Russia would benefit from U.S.-Mexico tensions. Trump's calls for military intervention against cartels could create instability that Russia exploits diplomatically. Trump's threats may seem absurd, but they conveniently overlap with Russia's global interests. Weakening NATO in Greenland, challenging Canada's Arctic claims, disrupting Panama's sanctions on Russia, and destabilizing Mexico all serve Putin's long-term goals. Whether intentional or not, Trump's rhetoric benefits Russia more than America. Story 19. Increase global instability and cause America's longtime allies to lose faith and trust in the United States. Story 20. I think he intends to annex those countries. He will need a war or a national emergency to avoid holding any more elections, so he is setting it all up now. Story 21. Trump has been funded by Russian banks for decades. He wants everything to repay what he owes Russia. He is a Russian asset. I would bet that Melania was sent to him as a gift. Story 22. On Putin's orders, Trump is taking actions and making statements intended to destabilize America and its allies. America is busy sacrificing a great nation for one man who rules a nation 5,000 miles away, aided by another man who lacks morals and now possesses only a fragment of a functioning mind. Out of fear, many Republicans and some non-political individuals are blindly supporting the degradation of America. Story 23. I have the same question, particularly regarding Canada. I read an article some time ago during the presidential campaign that discussed Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán and his ties to Kevin Roberts, the head of the Heritage Foundation. They talked about the major conservative political action conference in Hungary and how it was kept under wraps, but that Donald Trump delivered a taped video speech for the event. The story outlined how the Heritage Foundation and the far-right movement had a plan for world domination, with their eyes set on the United States and Canada, as indicated by Project 2025. It was my understanding that even before our election was decided, they had people in Canada working on their election strategy to secure a Pierre Poilievre win. Elon Musk even referenced this when he told a Canadian on Twitter, "You're next," after Trump won. My confusion is, if this is their grand plan to get Poilievre elected, why is he doing things that upset most Canadians and energize the Liberal Party? Are they so confident that if they keep insisting Canada should be the 51st state, it will resonate, leading to Poilievre's election and the realization of their master plan? I feel like there is more to this that I am not aware of, and I may be missing a key part of the puzzle. It doesn't add up. Story 24. It is the dismantling of the American empire by Russia and China. They alienate its closest allies, sow mistrust and internal division, and ruin its economy and global soft power. Isolated and consumed by infighting, America will be a shadow of its former self and will relinquish significant spheres of influence to its rivals. Story 25. Create a distraction. Discuss something absurd loudly, drawing everyone's attention to one side while you quietly carry out something harmful without anyone noticing. Story 26. Exactly what he has achieved. The country really has no idea what is happening with Dogecoin. We are firing and rehiring federal employees at a staggering rate. All social programs are under attack and being dismantled. We are stepping back from being a major player on the international scene in any constructive way. Minorities and immigrants are being targeted for deportation and disenfranchisement. Medical misinformation is widespread. Anti-education and anti-intellectualism are key goals. It's all a smokescreen to distract from the significant issues actually occurring. No troops are mustering. Congress isn't voting on any war propositions. No one is preparing for an invasion. This does take up a significant amount of time in the news cycle, however. The propaganda machine loves to focus on comments made by the former president while actively not reporting or underreporting the issues that truly impact the American public. Who needs education or healthcare as long as certain groups of people are deported and the president can speak assertively about taking over other countries? Story 27. He wants to be a president who adds territory for his own vanity, just as he wants to broker peace in Ukraine by any means necessary. The only problem is that he embodies the Dunning-Kruger effect and thinks he can simply demand things and that everyone will listen. Story 28. He still believes he is in a mafia-style real estate mode in New York City. Everything is for sale, and if it's not, we can make it for sale. Story 29. Distraction. While we complain about that, he has Elmo collecting data he can sell and firing people from jobs he can then give to loyal allies who will do his bidding when the time comes. Story 30. Part of his negotiating strategy involves asking for far more than what is actually desired. He wrote a book on this approach. When you negotiate down, you often end up with what you truly want. Let's analyze each situation, as they have different reasons. First, Greenland. He seeks mineral rights there, as the minerals found would reduce dependence on China. By starting with the idea of annexation, he may negotiate a favorable mineral deal instead of beginning with a mineral deal that offers little in return. This strategy prompts the Danish government to consider its position. Is Greenland worth it? What is its strategic value and what income could it generate? These are important questions to consider when negotiating. Next, Canada. This situation is more complicated. In the last 5 years, there have been reports from Canada of individuals being jailed for protesting, alongside ongoing discussions about banning firearms to combat crime. Politically, the atmosphere has been challenging, and economically, trade relations could improve. Threatening annexation could provide some leverage, normalize trade, and resolve most diplomatic issues. However, normalizing trade and settling disputes would likely be the more realistic negotiated outcome. As for Mexico, the nation has been both corrupt and somewhat hostile to the United States for decades. The vast majority of individuals crossing the United States-Mexico border are not Mexican but come from Central and South America, with some from China. Mexico's indifference to this situation, at best, and assistance to migrants, at worst, mirrors a level of hostility that the United States rejected from Turkey when faced with threats to flood Europe with migrants. Additionally, large areas of Mexico are controlled by drug cartels that smuggle illegal drugs into the United States daily, using tunnels and, in at least one instance, catapults. Mexico's crime problem is increasingly becoming a challenge for the United States. Mexico's immigration issue is now a problem for the United States as well. With no willingness to address these issues, annexation appears to be an easy solution. I see this as the most probable scenario, even though what is truly desired is for Mexico to effectively manage and police its own country. Story 31. He wants to sever ties with all allies of the United States. It is not about the economy or putting America first. This would have been approached differently if that were the case. He is merely following orders from his superior. He aims to isolate and divide us from our allies so that Russia and China can dominate Europe and the world. The United States has been the strong champion that has held back these tyrants and aggressors since World War II. But now they have found ways to entangle us and put us into a state of disorientation. Story 32. I think he wants, almost demands, to be called the greatest American president ever. He is a complete narcissist, so it is all for his ego. He has to one-up everyone, but I think Obama, especially being president, stirred something up in him, and he couldn't just let that go. He saw all the genuine love for Obama, which he couldn't understand because he is not a real American, as we saw him display with all the birth certificate lies. He wants all the glory associated with great leaders, even if it doesn't make sense. So, he wants to be seen as a great empire builder again, even if those times have passed. And yet he also wants to force Ukraine's surrender so that he can demand to be awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, I happen to think that the Nobel has lost some of its integrity for awarding Obama the prize when he didn't do anything yet but be elected. But no matter, Obama got one, so Trump needs to get one too. Story 33. My view is that Putin convinced Trump that the old world order of spheres of influence, where superpowers divide the world, is a viable approach. Not because Trump is a Russian asset, but because Putin is skilled at appealing to people's egos, making it sound like a good plan to Trump since he benefits from it. This implies that the United States gets North America, Greenland, and likely Central America, while Russia claims Ukraine and Eastern Europe. This perspective overlooks the immense suffering of people under this system. The relationship between those in a given sphere and the superpower is often extractive. It's focused on what they can provide to the United States rather than anything else. Another important point often ignored is the distinction between limited and unlimited objectives. A leader with limited objectives can be negotiated with, as they have specific goals in mind. Both Putin and Trump, however, have unlimited objectives. They desire everything. This indicates that they will inevitably come into conflict at some point, especially as the European Union and North Atlantic Treaty Organization weaken, along with, by extension, the United States. Story 34. It's Russia. Since the Crimean invasion in 2014, Panama has not allowed Russian ships to pass through the canal. Now that the ice is melting, Russia seeks passage through Canadian and Greenlandic waters. Story 35. He wants to be known as the next Andrew Jackson. Simple as that. For many of us, that is a horrifying idea, but he believes that being a jingoistic conqueror and subjugator is the greatest legacy one can have. He also seems to think that almost everyone in these countries would like to be ruled by him and is in denial of the fact that not even most Americans want that. Many people believe this is too simplistic, that he is actually committing acts of terror to distract from his real crimes. However, I would like you to consider, the man has never shown that degree of cleverness. His lies are always straightforward and simple, comparable to those of a 5-year-old, for example. I do not know what Project 2025 is. I do not know the man who was my Secretary of State last week, and he openly solicits bribes without attempting to conceal it. What you see is what you get. Story 36. A war, so he can refuse to hold elections. Riots, so he can declare martial law and refuse to hold elections. He told everyone what he wants. He wants to be king. Story 37. My guess is exactly what's happening. Europe is becoming less dependent on United States defense. Seriously, the United States has been saying that Europe needs to pay for its defense for my entire adult life. It took a significant event for European leaders to consider establishing their own defense capabilities. And now they are all acting like controlling their own defense forces is a new, brilliant idea. Story 38. I think he is purposefully dismantling the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. My serious answer is that it has been a long-term strategy from the Russian government. My joke answer is that it's an alien conspiracy to weaken the world so we are easier to target. Only the elites in the United States know this and are cooperating with them in the hope that they will be spared. If you want my more measured opinion, it is about resources and opening up trade across the Arctic regions. Story 39. Literally to distract you from 1. The richest man in the world trying to cut billions in spending so that 2. Donald Trump can give billions in tax breaks to corporations and the wealthy. Story 40. The goal of the Zimmerman telegram was a note sent from Germany to Mexico during World War I, promising land in the American Southwest if Mexico attacked the United States. Its purpose was not to actually inspire Mexico to go to war, but to identify leaks in their communication channels and to sow tension and distrust among the United States, which was considering joining the war at the time. Trump's aim is not to turn North America into one super country, but to distract the European Union from Ukraine, to burden them financially with defense agreements with Canada and Denmark, and to divert time, attention, and resources away from Zelensky. Story 41. Distract with these trivial matters while he undermines and damages the economy. This individual is likely profiting significantly from selling questionable cryptocurrencies. He may also become wealthy during a potential recession, with ample resources to acquire real estate and assets at a discount from those who have little left. Story 42. It distracts from the significant issues being addressed domestically. It's easy to become concerned about the prominent issue that seems ridiculous compared to the technological matters most people do not understand. Additionally, it shifts the Overton window, making something smaller, such as invading and annexing a Caribbean island, appear less serious in comparison. Story 43. Enforce a world order where power determines morality. This approach is similar to that of Vladimir Putin, who likely perceives it as a demonstration of strength. He disregards every diplomatic agreement and treaty because he did not personally sign them and lacks respect for political history and tradition. Ukraine was promised protection, and Greenland was assured recognition as part of Denmark in exchange for the sale of the United States Virgin Islands. This short-term strategy may lead to personal enrichment but comes at the expense of long-term stability. Story 44. Television ratings. The man is a delusional individual who believes that the amount of attention people pay to him is how one measures the success of a presidency. Story 45. Because Canadians are easier to conquer than Mexicans. I am just kidding. We all know Canadians are known for their kindness, and we also know the term dumpster refers to a child sitting in a big chair. To be honest, I don't really know, and I personally believe Canada belongs to Canadians, and we should live in peace. Story 46. Trump is not, as far as I can tell, a politician who succeeds by delivering results, meaning I promised X and delivered X or the closest available thing. He is a politician who succeeds by promising or stating the right things, such as, I will drain the swamp. I will reinvigorate the American imperialist machine. I will put money in your pocket. I will protect you from a scary thing I invented. The delivery or lack thereof is not important. The threat is the goal. His base wants him to make the threat. Story 47. To engage you and divert your attention, he relies on tactics that distract from significant issues. Trump's strategy includes making outrageous and irrational statements, creating outrage, taking actions behind the scenes while attention is focused on his controversial remarks, doubling down on more extreme and irrational comments if people begin to notice. He is controlling the narrative and steering conversations to topics of his choice, preventing focus on what he wants to conceal. This has been his modus operandi for decades. He aims to shift discussions toward countries like Canada, Greenland, and Mexico, while avoiding questions about the potential for an economic recession or his inability to reduce grocery prices. Stop allowing him to dictate the narrative. Instead of reacting to every outrageous statement, focus on his actual actions, which he would prefer to keep out of the spotlight. Story 48. I believe it is primarily a distraction to mislead the world as he transforms into a dictator, eliminating all obstacles in his path. Story 49. He hopes to prove what a worthless, pathetic, impotent, deranged, and toxic individual he has always been and will always be known for after his eventual death. Story 51. Normalize Russia's actions. Justify Russia's expansion into Eastern Europe by adopting a foreign policy of spheres of influence, where the United States cedes much of the world to Russia and China while maintaining heightened influence over countries within its own sphere. Disrupt the NATO alliance. Distract Europe with territorial aggression on two fronts. Story 51. It's all about arrogance. He doesn't care about anything else. He wants to make himself the greatest president of all time and is searching for something bold and flamboyant to achieve, regardless of the cost. Arrogance and vanity. I had never wanted to join the military before, but because of this self-absorbed individual, I am considering joining the reserves to be more prepared if we have to engage in guerrilla warfare. Story 52. I think it's a distraction tactic. He is diverting attention from the more important actions his associates are taking, like undermining the American government system. The man is foolish, but at least he is clever enough not to openly reveal his true intentions. It's typical of scam artist techniques. Story 53. Because he is receiving briefs from individuals who want to create a new American empire, telling him it is important. He is not knowledgeable, so he believes them. Story 54. He handles the situation like he did with the banning of TikTok. Starting the issue, then acting like the savior and stopping it, and everyone accepts it. Story 55. From a negative perspective, he is deliberately isolating the United States from all allies in preparation for taking dictatorial powers and allying with his puppet master, Vladimir Putin. Story 56. He is clearly normalizing the invasion of other countries, which provides justification for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Story 57. Destroying America's reputation among its allies and doing Putin's bidding as the traitor he is while lining his own pockets since the day he was in Russia for the first time and was picked up by the FSB. Story 58. It would provide Russia with justification for taking Ukraine and make the United States less able to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine because it would be perceived as hypocritical. Additionally, it would give China justification for taking Taiwan. Story 59. This is something that all autocrats do. They promise their citizens an expanding, best country in the world. Adolf Hitler did it, Benito Mussolini did it, Napoleon did it, Hirohito did it, and Vladimir Putin does it. It's all about placating the masses because autocratic policies tend to be detrimental for the everyday people on the ground, as they are purely built on enriching those at the top. It's literally a smokescreen to inject patriotism into the uneducated masses who voted for him, so they'll forgive the massive hike in grocery prices, the destruction of their children's education, and the erosion of their retirement plans by promising them new land and new opportunities. Story 60. It's a distraction technique. While everyone is upset about that, they are not focusing on the monetary gains he is somehow funneling to himself. Just my opinion, of course. Story 61. To get us talking and thinking about it instead of focusing on cleaning the orange stain off the red, white, and blue. Story 62. Like Ukraine, Canada and Greenland are rich in rare earth metals. Technology enthusiasts want rare earth metals to make batteries for their electric cars and devices. Trump has already tried to pressure Zelensky. He is now threatening Canada with tariffs and attempting to influence Greenland. I think it is fair to assume that he has been given orders by his large technology donors to secure rare earth metals for them by any means necessary. Story 63. I am convinced he is a Russian asset now, attempting to destabilize the allied nations and drive a wedge between all the old allies, weakening America overall. When America is beset on all sides by nations that are no longer friends, he can solidify power and enrich himself. Russia will be funneling money his way as a thank you for fracturing the old alliances. Story 64. Trump's comments about annexing countries are likely more for attention and stirring up nationalism than actual plans. It is his usual way of making bold statements to get noticed. Story 65. It is one aspect of geopolitical destabilization of the United States, which primarily benefits Russia, and one aspect of misdirection regarding the significant dismantling of the federal government outlined in Project 2025. Story 66. You are reading too much into it. Putin wants the world to turn against America, so by directing his puppet to make threats like annexing countries, he only further helps bolster anti-American sentiment. If America gets Greenland and is effectively controlled by Russia, then Russia gets to control the Arctic Circle by proxy. Story 67. The main goal is to distract from his domestic policy. It keeps his base focused on foreign policy and nationalism, makes apathetic potential voters think that he isn't targeting them, and provides the media with good ratings so they don't dwell on the more subtle and relatively mundane actions of his administration. That said, I don't take the threats lightly. He is a fickle opportunist. If he decides that following through on these threats is a political or economic win for him and his allies, he will act accordingly. As a Canadian, I must take his words seriously even though I believe he does not take himself seriously when making these statements. He has already declared economic war on my country and expressed interest in escalating the situation. Story 68. I believe that in Trump's mind, he is doing this for shock value. Subconsciously, it seems to be his inner self trying to prove to his ego that he can also be an invader like Putin. Story 69. I think it's a mix of misdirection and a bluff, seeing if he can gain something by just saying it and if the task can actually be achieved due to unforeseen events. Story 70. I still can't believe this reality television personality, criminal and con man was ever allowed to be president in the first place. This country is misguided. Story 71. He is overweight, affluent, and will likely pass away in under 15 years. He desires to leave the world in ruin, unconcerned about the aftermath. None of this impacts him. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.